What's going on, everyone? Today I am excited to get back into the swing of things, to do these kind of ask me anything videos. I've tried a couple live chats in the past and it was more work than I thought, so I'm gonna go back to these recorded videos, especially now that school is ending, my internship is ending, and many of my side projects are also ending. So I'm spending more time answering your questions. So I'm excited to get back into that. The second thing I want to say before the video starts to roll here is that I'm trying to figure out a way to make these questions more efficient. I get probably about 100 questions a day and I just cannot keep up in responding. I try my best, but because of the variety of topics and questions that I get, and the volume of questions and the length of questions is just utterly impossible for me to respond in a efficient way. And that's also why I do the videos, is because many of you ask the same exact questions, and I try to share as much of my thoughts and to address as many of those questions as possible through video so it benefits others. But with that being said, let's jump into the video and get started. So before I jump right into the questions, I do want to say two more things. The first of which is more logistical. Because the variety of questions are so different sometimes, I'm going to leave timestamps below so you can jump to the questions that you're only interested in. And the second thing is, before I start answering questions, I do want to highlight a comment, or I guess this was an email that I got recently, because there are many times I get a lot of messages, but every now and then I get some messages and comments that are purely just to thank you. And those, of course, are always really nice to hear, because some of you who follow some of my videos and non-pharmacy related content know that I've probably been under a lot of stress over the last year. So this was a very heartfelt message, and thank you to Mike who sent the message. But I wanted to read the comment because I want to share this with everyone. Maybe more selfishly, but it certainly made me feel good, and being under stress, it was very helpful. So I'll read the comments. So this is from, again, Mike. Let's see. Mike says, I know that you probably get a lot of emails, but just wanted to shoot an email too. I'm subscribed to your channel in YouTube, so almost all of your videos. I'm also a pharmacist, and since I got interested in being an informatics pharmacist, I watched your videos and really enjoyed them. I recently got a job as an informatics pharmacist, and I'm really happy for it. I really want to thank you for your videos like how to become an informatics pharmacist without residency and many others more. They were a great help. The reason why I'm sending this email is that I heard you went through some tough phases in your life, but I wanted to tell you that you are an inspirer to someone, or at least to me, definitely. When I became a pharmacist, or even trying to become an informatics pharmacist, I was looking for a role model or a mentor. I have goals in my mind, and as I watch your videos, I get ideas and plans for my goals from you. Even though you may not have realized, you have become my role model and mentor. I'm also interested in getting MPH or other degrees going forward. I'm also interested in what your next steps and what you're going to do with your life, as those could set my next career path. So thank you for all your videos and help. I didn't know how to express my thankfulness, so I just decided to email you, haha. Again, thank you, sincerely, Mike. There are so many things I would want to say to that, and I think that I'm going to create another video in response to some of the comments made, because I do have some certain thoughts that I've been wanting to create a video about. I'll share that in a future video, but all I want to say right now is that thank you, Mike. Thank you for sending the message. It's always those types of comments that makes me feel as though what I'm doing is the right thing. So now I'm going to jump into the questions. Again, if you want to go to a specific question, use the timestamps below to jump to that part. The first question is from Andrew, and it's related to EPIC certifications. So the question from Andrew: Brian, any tips on how to get a job in EPIC without having an EPIC certification? I'm wanting to work in EPIC, but every time I apply to organizations, they always require a certificate. I am wanting to start a new career in the healthcare field due to my mom passing away from cancer. It is my goal and passion to work in the medical field. I have over 10 plus years of IT experience, but it has been tough trying to find a role that relates to EPIC without a cert. Thank you for your help in advance. So Andrew, my condolences to your family. I feel as though it's always those kind of major events in life that bring individuals to healthcare, such as myself. That happened to me as well. But my condolences to you about your mom. And to your question, I'll try to be as brief as possible here and try to explain a couple of thoughts on this. The first thought is why you might be experiencing a tough job market out there. The first is that meaningful use is legislation that was back in 2009 from high tech that really spurred the adoption of EHR records all over the nation. And it created this enormous demand for individuals to help implement EHRs because you get these tons of financial incentives. So between 2009 to 2015, 2017, that really set the stage for individuals to get into informatics and made it actually quite easy to get into, even if you didn't have the right credentials or right experience, because to be honest, no one really did. And it was very easy to get in. Now it's 2020. Meaningful use isn't really there anymore. There's different initiatives that it's morphed into, but most of the US is already on an EHR. So that kind of demand doesn't really exist anymore. If anything, there's quite a few individuals out there that are probably more level now in terms of the supply and demand with individuals with Epic certs. So that's probably why it's difficult to get into these positions if you don't have an Epic cert, because a lot of individuals do. So, I mean, your question here, that doesn't really address your question. Your question is about, how do you get into this role without an Epic cert? And maybe a couple of comments on that. First this is kind of a vague, nebulous type of answer, but I would say networking and connections always make a difference, no matter what. So network or get involved in organizations within healthcare, especially those that have Epic as their EHR vendor. So any local organizations in your area, get involved, network, meet those individuals, and over time, as you build those relationships and you express naturally, I would imagine, your passion for getting into healthcare, that would come out and people will think of you when those opportunities come up. And that's, probably more passive in some ways because you're just kind of waiting for those opportunities. But it's important to build those relationships because many times jobs come from those inner circles. The second thing I would say is to get involved in any projects and initiatives that require IT experience. And there are many of those where, us as medical professionals don't have that technical expertise and want individuals with that technical expertise. And you can find those anywhere, whether it's in volunteering or part-time gigs or contracting roles. Look for those kind of roles where they're not looking for someone with an Epic cert. They're looking for someone for technical expertise, which you have, and you can start to build those relationships and get into it that way. You might be working with someone that's working with an Epic. So that's the second thing. And then the third is probably to work for an organization or look for opportunities in an organization if you're not already in one that has your type of role, which I imagine any healthcare organization needs IT, right? So that's a definite. So look for an organization or role in a hospital probably that hires for that. And then as that hospital that has Epic rolls out new projects, which it always does through a variety of reasons why, new projects, new regulations, and they have to evolve and have upgrades and patches and new projects that come out, they will ask for people within their organization to work on them. And back in the day, back in meaningful use times, that was how a lot of individuals without credentials and experience got into informatics because they were already an internal employee there, they had an interest in informatics, and that opportunity in the organization came up. Epic or any other organization that has an EHR vendor always has new projects because of new regulations and other things. So that would be another opportunity. Get hired as what you normally do on your day job at a hospital, and over time those opportunities will come up and you can get into those Epic roles. So hopefully that was helpful. I know it's a little bit more nebulous, but give that a try, see how it goes. Keep me posted on how it goes. All right, next question is about master's program. So this one's about master's in health IT. And this is a question from Victoria. So Victoria says, hey Brian, thanks so much for this video. I'm trying my best early on to get as much information in pharmacy informatics. I'm currently employed as a medical lab scientist, aka medical technologist. Terms are used interchangeably and transitioning into the pharmacy field. I will be a first year pharm student this upcoming fall. The program I'm going to be in has a dual degree program with PharmD HIT Masters. I'm debating whether or not to pursue a master's or simply getting a health informatics certificate. My mind is mostly debating based on the cost of a master's versus certificate. But I also want to know if the benefits of getting a master's is much higher than getting a health informatics certificate. Thanks so much for your videos. Okay, so there's quite a bit to unpack there. I don't remember the question. I guess first of all, congrats on getting accepted as a pharmacy student. Those years go by fast. The program I'm trying to get into, whether or not to pursue masters. So a couple of thoughts here, and I always try not to give an answer per se, because the answer will always depend on you, what your interests are. But I'll give you my philosophies and thought process in general on how I would approach this. A dual master's. The first thing I would say for my own philosophy is that I value learning from different organizations. One quick example, this is anecdotal, is like University of Florida versus Florida State University. What I hear, again, this is anecdotal, is that if you attended UF as an undergrad and you want to go to med school, there's a higher chance of getting into FSU med school than UF med school. Similar in FSU. If you went to FSU undergrad, it's easier to get into UF med school than FSU med school. And the reason why is because when you pursue these professional avenues and careers, there's a value in diversity. And how FSU teaches versus how UF teaches is different. So personally, using that example, I have the same philosophy in learning. If I were to go back, I would not pursue a master's during my time in pharmacy school, because I value learning from a different organization, especially if it's a different degree. But the flip side to that, there's a lot of pros and cons here, right? And one of the cons is that usually when you do that route, the time it takes, the efficiency in completing an additional degree is probably way less efficient if you don't do a dual degree. The cost is probably way cheaper when you are doing a dual degree. And the time you can devote to a dual degree program and getting both degrees is probably way easier when you're a full-time student than when you're like a part-time in the future, or you have to take off to do it. So there's a lot of pros and cons to weigh here, but my philosophy and what guides me is that I value diversity in learning. So that's one. The second thing here, you talk about master's first certificate. I think that I personally, this is again personal preference, I value master's higher than a certificate. I mean, just in terms of the lengths of time, the requirements in the projects, and what's required to get a master's. I mean, you just need more dedication. So you would put more value on a master's versus a certificate. With that said, the important thing is what employers are looking for, right? If a employer was hiring someone for pharmacy informatics and they see someone with a master's and a certificate, there's probably a higher likelihood that they choose the person with the master's. And anecdotally speaking, what I usually see in these job postings is that you would more often than not see someone list a bachelor's or master's in health information technology as a preference rather than a certification. The other thing I'll say about this is that you can have a PhD, let's say you had 5 PhDs in informatics. It doesn't really matter if you had that versus what your actual work experience is and what you actually know. So What I would say with that, especially considering you're concerned with finances, so it's a tough question. So in terms of just like pure what's better, I would almost objectively say it's a master's, but you can't discredit a certificate just because of that, because it's your work experience and your own knowledge of pharmacy informatics and informatics fundamentals. With that said, because you are concerned about finances, another alternative avenue that would support that way of thinking is the free courses that are offered out there from the MOOCs. I don't remember what it stands for. It's like massively online something. But basically, it's an online platform for learning skill sets like informatics or coding or programming or any type of thing you can imagine from top universities for free. And again, if you're just trying to gain information about informatics, you don't need to necessarily do it through formal education like a master's or certificate. Actually, the online courses are still also formal because you can get a certificate for it, but it's a way of getting knowledge for free, and you can do it on your own time. And I would almost say that that's one of your best bets to pursue if all you're doing is learning informatics, because maybe informatics is not right for you. And the last thing I would want to do is set you off on this road where you pursue a master's or a certificate, take a financial hit, and realize that this is not what you want. An online course is a very easy and safe way to pursue that avenue. Maybe even consider taking 1 or 2 courses there. If you really like it, then consider doing a master's or a certificate. The only downside, and this would be the last part of my answer, is that because of the job market in pharmacy right now, and it's probably just not as stable as as I would like it to be, is that if I steered you down the road of not pursuing a master's or certificate and you enter the pharmacy workforce, it's not impossible to get the job, but it's not easy either right now. And I think almost anyone that's been out of pharmacy school for a while will tell you that you want to do anything you can to differentiate yourself to be marketable. I would think that if you pursued either a master's or certificate, you would be more marketable. So again, this is not a great response because I haven't given you an answer here, but those are just some of my overarching thoughts, and I hope you would take some time to think about what makes the most sense for you. If anything, at minimum, try out an online course first, see how that works out, see if it really is something you like, then reconsider if a master's or certificate is right for you. Hopefully that was helpful. All right, next question is also related to a master's. This question is from Suad. Suad says, hope this email finds you well. I came across your LinkedIn page, and I hope you don't mind me asking. I'm a UK pharmacist looking to go into a new role. I'm currently thinking about doing a master's in public health or go into medical affairs. Any advice on which route is good to take for a pharmacist and what's in demand in the future? I'm interested in both areas, but not sure which route to take and what opportunities are available in public health as a pharmacist. Any advice or information would be helpful. So this is a great question. I have a couple of disclaimers here that would be good to hash out first. So first disclaimer is I'm in the US, so I'm not as familiar with the UK regulations and job opportunities. So that's the first disclaimer. The second disclaimer is that I'm not as familiar with the medical affairs area. I know people in that area, but I'm not as familiar with it. So with those disclaimers, I'll add some comments. The first comment, I don't remember the question already. The first comment on which route is good to take for a pharmacist. So I'll give you this from I guess I can kind of try to say from both perspectives. For a pharmacist is what you're asking, which route is better? I know a lot of pharmacists that get into medical affairs. It's just a common route, that one of the more traditional routes in the US, if you will. Like you think of retail, you think of hospital, and then you think of like industry. So I would say that's a very common traditional route. So in terms of being good for pharmacists, I would say that's good because it's one of the common routes that one may take. So opportunities are likely ample and prevalent in that area. Pretty good, right? Public health, I would say, I'm not gonna say that there's no opportunities or little opportunities. I would say that they're less well known. There's definitely a lot of opportunities for pharmacists in public health, but because they're less well known, I would think that opportunities in medical affairs relative to public health is probably a lot higher. And in terms of, I think this is probably your second question here. Oh no, that's what's in demand in the future. Let me finish this thought. So, as for the U.S., I would think that many of the roles for pharmacists in public health are within the government. So a lot of positions in the FDA, especially for pharmacists, NIH, doing things like pharmacoeconomics and pharmacoepidemiology. Lots of different roles for pharmacists in those areas. For medical affairs, again, I don't think that area is ever going to go away. That's pretty popular. So that's in the U.S. Now in the UK, I do know that there is the NICE organization, which I don't remember what the acronym stands for at the time, but I do understand that that's the organization in the UK that does cost-benefit analysis to determine which drugs to include in your national formulary. And I would think that that's a huge opportunity for pharmacists in the UK. In contrast to the US, the UK the UK NHS system is both the primary payer and deliverer of healthcare services. So opportunities to function in the role like NICE or be a pharmacist in the role in NICE and do those kind of things, I think would be a huge opportunity. But that's just purely guessing, right? And that's just my thought, that would be probably a huge area of opportunity and need for pharmacists. Now, your second question was about what's in demand in the future. I can tell you that, I imagine in the US, again, using the US, the medical affairs area will always be in demand. I'm not as familiar, going back to my disclaimer, how large of a demand it is, but we always need drugs, and that need is always there. So I would imagine that roles for pharmacists in medical affairs or just in industry in general will always be there. In terms of public health, I would imagine that to actually grow. And the reason why is because since the legislation that we had was the Affordable Care Act in 2010, and especially now, is that the US, and I imagine a lot of the other countries in the world, are moving towards more value-based care, less away from fee-for-service type setups. So there's a lot of interest in population-based care, public health type care, and opportunities in public health will absolutely grow. What I don't know from that aspect is whether or not, like, how the roles look like for pharmacists. My interest is in public health as a whole and not necessarily public health for pharmacists. I'm just interested in public health. And I can tell you that the roles in public health, especially right now in light of the pandemic, is likely gonna grow a lot more. So what's in demand in the future? I would say public health relative to your question, public health relative to medical affairs will likely be higher in that regard. Okay, so hopefully that was somewhat helpful. Another question is this one specifically about MPH. So this was actually a follow-up question, and they said, wow, that's amazing. I wonder what was your turning point on how you chose Hopkins over Harvard. I believe the original question was asking about where I did my MPH, something like that. And I think I said I chose Hopkins over Harvard, something like that. But so the question was why I chose Hopkins over Harvard. What I can say is that there were 4 main programs I considered for my MPH. One is, let me see, I don't have the name of the person asking the question. One is that the 4 places I chose is Harvard, Hopkins, UNC, and Emory. So those are the 4 areas I contemplated. And I can tell you that the choice in my MPH program, there were so many different factors, but some of the ones I was looking for was the ability to work part-time, do the program part-time, so not a full-time program. Second was to enhance my own learning in public health informatics and policy. And then the third thing is having the flexibility and opportunity to explore different avenues in public health. Public health itself is, quite a large area concept. I don't know how to even describe it. Just a large area. So there's so many avenues to explore. So I wanted a program that will allow me to explore my different interests. So in terms of Harvard versus Hopkins, the easiest thing I can tell you why I chose Hopkins is because Harvard required a GRE. I did start studying for my GRE, but at the time I was very busy and I just could not keep up because I was also studying for a lot of other things at the time. And the requirement of a GRE was not in my interest. Hopkins does make a GRE optional. And the reason why they do like to see a GRE is because they want to make sure you have very strong quantitative skills. And being an informatics pharmacist for a couple years, having, I would say, a relatively strong background in technical areas, that I didn't feel as though I needed to take a GRE to be competitive at Hopkins. And that's what I did. So I was hoping my work experience would help offset that requirement. The second thing about Harvard versus Hopkins is that Harvard's part-time program, not full-time, and I was only interested in part-time, Harvard's part-time program is only in epidemiology. I do enjoy epidemiology, but I was also very interested in other areas of public health, like how we can learn more about public policy or informatics. And I didn't like the fact that Harvard's part-time program was a strong emphasis on epidemiology. I wanted a program that can give me a good breadth of things. So Harvard did not provide that in their part-time program, as opposed to Hopkins, which has an 80-degree credit program, almost double the amount that any other MPH program out there offers, has 40 credits in their core curriculum for general public health studies, and then 40 credits in electives. Hopkins program, if you look through the course catalog, you can just browse it, it's publicly available. And you look through the course catalog, they have an insane amount of offerings and courses that span public health, policy, informatics, environmental, like anything you can imagine, because Hopkins has so many different areas of focus. You can take courses with the business school, with their informatics departments, with their policy like so many different areas. So Hopkins was way more attractive than that. Hopefully that was a succinct answer, but that's why I chose Hopkins over Harvard. And I can tell you now that I'm about to finish the program in about a week or 2 weeks, I have zero regrets. I would have chosen Hopkins over any MPH program without a shadow of a doubt. It has been one of the most rewarding and best experiences I have had doing that. So I just finished recording and it was over 30 minutes. I have no idea if it cut out my last part. If it did, I'm just recording it, ending right now. Hope you guys found value in these answers and thoughts. I feel as though I didn't directly address any of the questions, but just gave you some of my overarching thoughts and comments on your questions. But hopefully you found value. If you did, let me know in the comments below. If you have more questions, let me know in the comments below as well. And until next time, guys.